Well, you are welcome back to class, and this is class 6 of our CPD program for this month, and this is where we are going to be rounding it off for this month. Immediately after this class, we'll be writing our examination. Like I've told you, the questions will be sent to your school owner or school administrator who will be administering the tests and examinations in your respective schools. So get ready after this session. The examination will be coming up. If you score 40%, that's our cutoff mark, then you are eligible to apply for certificate for this particular focus of the CPD, attaining competence in teaching profession. In our class 1, we look at introduction to attaining competence in teaching profession. And we look at 3 major characteristics of a competent teacher. Number 1, knowledge of subject matter, knowing what to teach. Number 2, knowledge of delivery methods, knowing how to teach. And number 3, knowledge of the learners, knowing who to teach. From there, we went to class 2, where we took the first one. That's knowledge of subject matter, knowing what to teach. And in our class 3, we went to knowledge of delivery methods. That is where we look at how to teach. That is what we did in class 3, class 4, class 5. As we look at part 1, part 2, part 3, we look at 20 requirements of competence in methodology for teachers. We look at 20 things a teacher should do within a 40-minute lesson period. It was such a broad one. If you have not attended those classes, you need to go and check for those videos. That's class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, class 5. So you can bridge the knowledge gap for this class 6. Now we have seen what to teach. We have seen how to teach. We are going to the third characteristic of a competent teacher, and that is knowing who to teach. Don't forget, as a matter of revision, we did in class 1 that many teachers know what to teach. Some teachers know how to teach. Only a few teachers know who to teach. I said then that that is where the real work of teaching lies. Someone who has A1 in mathematics may not be the best mathematics teacher. Someone who has first class in chemistry may not be the best chemistry teacher. He knows what to teach, but he doesn't know how to teach. But let's assume that someone knows what to teach and he knows how to teach. We thumb up for that person, but he's not yet a competent teacher yet. Or you discover that such a teacher might be teaching and may not be able to carry the generality of the student along. So you have 30 students in the class, and these 30 students, they have 30 different temperaments. They have different backgrounds, different experiences. They come from different families. They have different learning styles and all of that. How do you structure your lesson in such a way that will cater to all the 30 categories of students that you have? The fearful ones are there, the lazy ones are there, diligent ones are there, the proud ones are there, the visual ones are there. I mean, 30 students. That is where we know real competent teacher. So fasten your seatbelt as we go into the world of knowledge of the learners. It's a broad one. I'm not assuring you that I will take everything today. It's going to form the focus of what we're going to be doing next month, actually. But I'm going to give an intro this today, and I want you to pay maximum attention. We'll look at it from about 4 different perspectives, knowing who to teach. How much of the learners do you know, and how much of your students do you know? You know why the brilliant students are getting more brilliant and the dull ones are getting duller is because we know what we want to teach, and we are good at our own teaching methodology, but we don't know the styles of our students. So we're going to be looking at the learning styles knowledge. We're going to be looking at behavioral knowledge of the child. We're going to be looking at the psychological and biological knowledge of the child. We're going to be looking at the temperamental knowledge of the child. As a teacher, you need to have this comprehensive knowledge. Otherwise, you're going to be overwhelmed. And I've been bombarded, by this question everywhere I go for to facilitate training or even to go for quality assurance visits. And why is it that this student is not picking? Why is it that this student is not getting what I'm teaching? It's because you know what to teach, you know how to teach, but you don't know who you are teaching. So let's go. Number 1, the learning styles. Knowledge of learning styles of the child. For you to be able to teach a child, to migrate that child from C to B or B to A. When I say from C to B, I mean from below average learner to average learner, from average learner to above average learner, to be able to migrate the child, which is the ultimate goal of every teacher. You need to understand the learning styles of each child. We have about 15 learning styles we're going to be looking at next month in our CPD next month. But I will just do a brief overview because I still want to touch the remaining three. We have the visual learners. The only way they learn is when they see. Their brain is connected to their eyes. If they don't see, they don't learn. Let me give you an example. If you are teaching flower, for instance, when you teach flower, you talk about flower, you talk about sepals, you talk about petals, you talk about filament, and all of that. You are appealing to the auditory learners. Auditory learners are those learners whose brains are connected to their heads. The way they assimilate is to hear. They may not see, yet they will assimilate. You just need to sit down. Just as I'm talking now, it's good for some learners without seeing anything. Just give them even audio recording. They are good. Those are auditory learners. So when I finish talking like that, the auditory learners, they pick what I'm saying. But auditory learners, they form just a small percentage of the class that you are teaching. So that means you'll be losing many of the visual learners until you bring out a flower. And when you bring out a flower, you show everybody the flower. Everybody see this flower. The moment you do that, something will spark in the visual learners. That is when they come back to class. All that you have been doing before, you have been catering to auditory learners, they are not gaining much. But now that you start talking and showing, now visual learners get up. And you know what? Every class has average of 67% of visual learners. So they form the bulk. That is why teaching aids, instructional materials usage is a must in every standard-driven and standard-compliant classroom. But then you have catered for auditory and visual learners. There are still other types, learning styles that you have not catered for until you now say, okay, if you take this flower, touch it. When if you touch it, when they say, oh, this is better, this is safer, that is when if begins to learn. Such learners are called tactile learners. They are learners whose brains are connected to their hands. Until their hands manipulate the object, they don't gain maximally. Now, look at the way you have been teaching. You have not been catering for tactile learners. And so you keep complaining, am I not doing my best? I will teach and teach and teach and I will produce sweat. And yet you people are not getting anything. I'm frustrated. You don't need to be frustrated. The truth of the matter is just that you are not taking care of what will stimulate learning in the tactile learners. So by the time you take the flower around and then they touch the tactile learners wake up, that is when they're just coming into your class. But there are still other types of learners that are still dormant and passive in your class without your knowledge. So when you now say, Fele, you come, take the flower around, take it around, take it around. Now, that is when you begin to cater for his own learning need. Why? Because his learning style is a kinesthetic learner. Kinesthetic learner, the brain is connected to the legs. Until he moves around, he's not learning. So if you do not understand, you now say, oh, if actually is an auditory learner, and if really is a kinesthetic learner. Auditory learner just need their head to be listening to you and they're good. But kinesthetic must move up and down. They can't sit down for 5-10 minutes. They must stand up. If you do not understand that, you want to use the same style you are using, the same approach you are using for auditory learner, for kinesthetic learner will never learn anything. And that is how many of us have shut down the potentials of kinesthetic learners. You want kinesthetic learner to sit down for 1 hour, no standing up, and you see, after all, it worked for FHA like that. It may not work for FLA like that because they have different learning styles. So we see how we are killing potentials of the children, of the students, because we do not have knowledge of the learners. And I tell you again, many teachers know what to teach. Some teachers know how to teach. Only a few teachers know who to teach. So as you do that, you discover that your auditory learners come up in class, your visual learners come up in class, your tactile learners come up in class, your kinesthetic learners come up in class, but you have still not catered for some people. By the time you now say, okay, talk about what you see in the flower. There are some students, they don't know anything about the flower. They do not even, they can't identify it, but you see them raising up their hand, they want to talk. They are verbal learners. Verbal learners, the brain is connected to the tongue, to the brain, to the mouth. They must talk. If you do not give them opportunity to talk, you are not giving them opportunity to learn. Whether what they say is reasonable or not, let them talk. That is when their vista of learning will open up. And that is when they will be connected. Oh my, it's already 10 minutes, so I have to stop here. But by next month, we are going to take all the learning styles. I just mentioned about 5 or 6 now, but we have about 15 that we're going to be discussing. That is why you don't want to meet CPD for next month. Now, you cannot know all these 15 because I will still be talking about analytical learners. I'm going to be talking about global learners. I'm going to be talking about surface learners. I'm going to be talking about deep learners. I'm going to be talking about strategic learners and so on and so forth. So we have so much. You just need to know the learning styles of your students. After knowing that, you now need to know the next aspect, which is the what I call the psychological and the biological knowledge of the child. And that is knowing how each child behaves age by age. Of course, many of us were blank in this area. If you are teaching in primary school, if you are teaching in nursery school, in kindergarten, in secondary school, you need to understand biologically how your students are supposed to behave by age. That is why in your lesson notes, we say that you should write average age of the pupils. We're not just saying you write that for writing's sake. It is because in knowledge of the child, age plays a major role. Many of you here as teachers, you do not know. And not even for your students, even for your biological children. You know, by the time we come to focus on this, I don't know whether we'll be able to handle it next month because next month will be devoted to who to teach. And I won't be in a hurry. If we're not able to finish next month, the upper month, the subsequent month, we're still going to continue. It is the major area of knowledge deficit for Nigerian and African teachers. There is so much knowledge deficit and information deficit in this area. We don't know these learners. There is a particular age a child will get to that you want to steal. It is not a moral question. It is purely a biological question. You want to steal. When you were at that age, you also stole from the pot. If you do not understand, you get overwhelmed either by your biological child or by your student. You want to beat the hell out of him or how you want to take him for deliverance in the mountain. But the first question you are going to ask as a professional, competent teacher is, how old is he? If you look at the age by knowledge, oh, this is the age you should steal. It's not that you are going to approve of what he has done, but you are going to be mild in your judgment and you are going to be professional about it. But if it is the age that he ought to have outgrown that, then you will bring out the full force of your armor of judgment. But how do you know if you do not have this? So what we're going to be, there's a particular way a child is expected to behave at age 1, at age 5, at age 6, at age 7. And I'm going to take us through the age one by one from age 1 to age 18. I'm going to be doing that. There is a particular age a child will get to, he just want to interact with opposite sex. It does not matter whether the father is a general overseer of holiness church or chief imam of a mosque. It is natural. It is emotional and it is biological. The hormones that are secreted in the body for that particular age makes chemistry to come up in the opposite sex. Am I saying that we look away from a child, becoming promiscuous? No, I'm not even talking about sexual intercourse here. I'm talking about the fact that a child does want to speak to someone of the opposite sex. He just wants to interact with them. There is a particular age, and I'm going to be telling us that age. So if you don't have this knowledge, you may become overboard, or you may become pampering. What you are supposed to really, really punish or discipline, you may not, because it's their age, and it may not be the age. And what you are supposed to to slow down about, you may become too outrageous about it. So this is the psychological and biological knowledge of the child. Many of our SS1, SS2, SS3 teachers, they get overwhelmed, they get frustrated when they are engaging and teaching students in these classes. They feel that these students are becoming too proud, too snobbish, and that they are becoming grouchy, difficult to teach. I've seen many teachers in the staff room when they're talking about this SS1, SS2, SS3 girls, they're not serious because they're already attaining puberty, because they're already having full-blown breast, because they're already having pubic hair, because they're already having boyfriends. That's why they're no more respecting the teachers. But that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is that there are expectations of behavior, both positive and negative, at age 16, at age 17. And if you are not aware of it, there's going to be two major problems. The first problem will be when they display those negative traits, you might want to resist so much to the point of fighting them and losing them. The second aspect is there are positive traits they are supposed to exhibit. And if you don't see it manifesting, then you will need to investigate why are they not showing those traits. At 17, this is what you expect should be done. At age 11, 12, there is something they should be able to do regarding mathematics, regarding literacy, regarding numeracy. So if you do not have this knowledge, you just discover that the children, you'll be using one-way approach. And the one-way approach many teachers use is the approach that works for brilliant students. You know what I said in the previous classes? Brilliant students, we call them anyhow, whatever we find its level. No matter how you train a brilliant child, no matter the methodology you use, no matter the approach you use, give a brilliant student skeleton, you will add muscle to it, add flesh to it, and get what you're saying. So many of us, because we have produced 2, 3 brilliant students who have passed so well, gain admission to university, even secure scholarship, we use that to now, become thumbed up and say, I'm such a good teacher. You're not yet a good teacher, and you cannot use the same approach for all the students. So that's knowledge we need to have it. And like I said, I've done this before. When I was conducting TCN, that is Teachers Conference Nigeria, I really took the teachers that came for that conference from age 1 to age 18. Of course, I can take it up to age 65. At age 50, there is a way someone will behave. So when your wife gets to 50, there is something you expect her to be doing. And she becomes too assertive, she becomes too authoritative. That does not mean that her submission level is dropping. It's just that at that age, she must behave like that. Okay. After we have talked about the psychological and the biological knowledge of the child, we now go to number 3. I'm still talking about knowledge of the child. What you need to know about the child, that's behavioral knowledge of the child. You see, there are behavioral patterns that you are going to see in different students. Take, for instance, the child who tells lie, the child who steals, the child who is aggressive, the child who has inferiority complex, the child who has inverted snobbery, the child who has fear syndrome. We have about 20 categories of these behavioral patterns. How do you handle them? Many of us know how to handle economics. We know how to handle chemistry, physics, biology, commerce, business studies, economics and accounting. We know how to handle government. We know how to handle CRS, RRK, and history, geography. But we don't know how to handle students that display these behaviors. So the moment you see a child that is telling lie, telling lie, telling lie, you get worked up, you get intimidated, you get overwhelmed, and you write off the child. You now concentrate on other children. That is why the brilliant students continue to be brilliant in your class, and the dull ones continue to be dull. It takes more than knowing the formula for solving circle or circle geometry. It takes more than formula for solving quadratic equation to be able to get a child to pass. You must know you must have the knowledge of the behavioral pattern. A child who steals, how do you handle him? What do you need to know about him? What are the causative factors of a child stealing? And then what is now we have what we call mental picture. And I will talk about this mental picture for like 2 minutes. You create a mental picture for every child, especially those who you call troublesome or challenging learners. So if a child steals, for instance, what mental picture do you create? Create a picture that he could become a police officer in future. Create a mental picture that he could become a CID or DSS officer. Maybe he could join CIA or even FBI. Create that mental picture. So it will help you to be able to take him out of the negative tendency, the destructive tendency of stealing, and bring out something positive. But it takes knowledge to be able to achieve that, whether for your students or for your biological children. Now we talk about a child who naturally, who tells lies without being caught, tells lies. Create a mental picture. What kind of mental picture? What kind of mental picture can you create for such a child? It could actually become a fiction writer because lying has to do with a lot of imagination, a lot of intelligence, and very high IQ. So you ask yourself, can he become a great fiction writer tomorrow? Can he become another Wole Soyinka or Chinua Achebe? Someone who can just own a story and garnish it, come up with names that never existed, thoughts that never existed, plot that never existed, cast that never existed, bring them together, and you are bringing a positivity out of the natural destructive tendencies of life. It takes knowledge to be able to do that. We also look at a child who is, you can also have a mental picture. Can he become a lawyer tomorrow? Am I saying that liars are lawyers or lawyers are liars? I'm not, don't quote me. But then, if a child is telling lies and you're able to help that child overcome the lying tendency, it could become a great lawyer tomorrow. Mental picture. What of the aggressive child, a bully that is always fighting everybody in the school, fighting on the street, fighting in the neighborhood? Do you write him off completely? Of course you don't. When you have knowledge of how to deal with aggressive students, you know aggression doesn't curb aggression. Aggression does not break aggression. Aggression, in the real sense of it, multiplies aggression. So, can you go to the sports stadium and look for a boxing coach, look for a wrestling coach, look for a taekwondo coach, a combat sports coach, and let that energy be channeled into a positive direction? So instead of fighting on the street and ending up in jail, why not fight in the ring and ending up a millionaire or a billionaire? So to understand how to deal with behavioral crisis of the children, you first and foremost need to create a mental picture. When you create a mental picture, what is the positive tendency of this behavioral pattern? And what is the positive tendency? Now, how do we get him out of the negative tendency and bring him to the positive tendency and make him to achieve this mental picture? So, like I said, we have 20 categories of this, and I'm going to be taking them in our subsequent CPD classes. So, talking about knowledge of the learners, I've talked about the learning styles of the child. I've talked about the knowledge of the psychological and biological knowledge of the child, and I've just finished talking about the behavioral knowledge of the child. The last aspect of the knowledge of the child that you need to have is the temperamental knowledge of the child. Knowledge of the temperament. You know how sanguines will behave. Sanguines naturally are extroverts, lively, garrulous, interesting, friendly, good marketers, good salespersons, great MCs, and they're in your classroom. They're the lives of the party. They make the classroom to be interesting and active. They raise up their hands to answer questions, whether they know the answer or not. Thank God for sanguines, the world would have been a boring place. But you also need to know what are their weaknesses, their unorganized nature, their undisciplined nature. the fact that they could be really, really not committed because they have so many friends to hang around with, and so on and so forth. You want to know how cholerics behave, the go-getters, the natural leaders, and they are in the class. You are looking for prefects, you know you can trust them. They have that natural leadership. And when they are not given that leadership role, they can become really, really troublesome. Their go-getting nature, their bulldog tenacity of purpose. But you also need to know their weaknesses as well. The fact that they can be difficult to please, they can be very, very fastidious. They are in your classroom. You need to know the melancholies, those who have been able to give us gift of inventions, gift of great songs, gift of great stories, great thinkers, melancholies, detailed people. But you also need to know their weaknesses. The fact that their perfectionist tendency can make them to become really, really grouchy and extremely unfriendly. And of course, we have the phlegmatics, the peaceful ones, those without which there will never be real peace in the world. They are extremely committed to peace. The sacrificial and selfless people, that they are ready to put themselves in great inconvenience just to achieve peace. Their motto is peace. While sanguine is crying law, is crying a relationship, and choleric is crying goal, vision, achievement. Melancholy is crying detail, perfection. Phlegmatic is crying peace, unity, togetherness. Now, you also need to know their weaknesses, the fact that they are flat-footed, that they will never move until they are pushed, the fact that they are fearful of taking major decisions. You need to know the combination of the temperaments for the students in your classroom. How would the sun flag behave? How would the sun claw behave? How would the sun male behave? How would the claw male behave? Claw flag behave? Claw sun behave? And so on and so forth. If you do not have this comprehensive knowledge of the child, you are going to teach solution of quadratic equations. You are going to teach factorization method. You are going to teach graphical method. You will teach parabola, cup shape, and cup shape. You will teach the formula method, y is equal to minus b plus or minus square root of b square minus 4ac everything all over 2a. And only 15 out of 40 students will get what you are teaching. And then you will become exasperated and say that, I don't know what else I can do again. These ones are not just getting anything. But you have not factored in number one. You have not factored in number one, their learning styles. You have not taken time to see whether your methodology is catering to the learning styles of those ones that are not getting it. You have not taken knowledge of their psychology and biology, that whether their age is in any way affecting their learning and their assimilation. You have not taken care of their temperaments. You have not taken care of their temperament. You have not taken care of their behavioral patterns. See, many times I have attended a lot of seminars. I have facilitated a lot. Of course, for us to have trained over 20,000 classroom teachers, 10,000 school administrators, you know what that means. But I discovered that the emphasis has always been on teaching methodology of teachers, teaching methodologies of teachers. It's like a pastor going to preach and he's talking about utterance, utterance, utterance. God, give me utterance, give me unction. If you pray for utterance and you don't pray for entrance in the heart of the audience, nothing will happen. Of course, you even know in homiletics that a prepared heart is better than a prepared message. For a very long time, you have been talking about your teaching methodologies. You have not talking about the learning methodology of your children. It's high time to do that. When I come your way next month, we're going to be discussing these 4 areas of knowledge of the child. You don't go away. The next class will be your examination. Get ready for it. You score 40%. then you apply for certificate. I love you all.